jobs across the continent and currently contributes about $144 billion to Africa's economy. And certainly there's significant room for growth. Now, when it comes to Africa's cyber security strategy adoption, it has been observed that only 22 out of the 54 African countries, about 40%, according to the UN ITU, really have, gone through a firm cybersecurity development and implementation process. Now, there may be other nations making progress, but these have not yet been noted in the ITU statistics. Professor Nathaniel Allen of the National Defense University and I published a paper titled Africa's Lessons in Cyber Strategy. And we found that really only Eswatini, Kenya, and Tanzania, and Mauritius had actually met all the parameters of the key elements of strategy design. And these parameters are the threat assessment, which identifies the scope and scale of national cyber threats, a plan of action, which are concrete goals and actions to address intended threats or expected threats, a timeline, which includes implementation dates and milestones, and certainly responsibilities to assign roles and responsibilities for all stakeholders within that jurisdiction. And also, very importantly, the resources, provisions for funding the implementation. As a Nigerian, my country is not there, and the reason is, though we got about 80% right, the institutional mechanism for driving this has still not come on stream. So as we discussed, I'd be grateful if the speakers would focus on solutions and the way forward. And also, I would like them to clarify their thoughts and possibly make suggestions on the linkages, if any, of cybersecurity to the African Union Agenda 2063 or other continental programs. And also, the second issue is, does cybersecurity have any relationship with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement? Since the agreement itself really says little or nothing about digital. Also, good news, lastly, Gambia was the 14th African nation to ratify the African Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection, aka the Malabo Convention. And thus we need one more country for it to enter into effect. And I would ask the esteemed panel what suggestions they can make towards its implementation. After the first set of questions by the moderator, we'll have the panelists address us each for about 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes each. And then I'll ask them a few questions. And then may I humbly ask the audience to type in their questions into the chat. And this is so that we keep our momentum so the panelists can address those questions. So let me kick off with Walter. Again, in the context of cybersecurity strategies to support Africa's digital economy, what has Africa done right, in your opinion, Walter?
Thank you, sir. Sorry, I was on mute. The biggest cliche of COVID-19 and working remotely. Well, Africa, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, by the way. So Africa, in my opinion, has done a lot of things right. There's no magic pill, there's no silver bullet, but at the end of the day, we need to appreciate the efforts, considering that most of these countries are coming from the ground going up. Why do I say so? Look at countries like South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, which we believe are the play host to the Silicon Valleys of Africa. These countries are churning out cybersecurity specialists by the day, and they offer services to the first world. So in essence, in Africa, we have, how can I say, we've the people, we can create a culture. So how do I put this? Okay, so educate the people, give them value, because most of these standards organizations we have around the world, your SANS, your ISC will tell you the human is the weakest link. So empower the human, and then you don't have to spend so much on all of those technologies that we have discovered are now not as efficient as before. And cybersecurity keeps on moving, eh? We started saying network security, now we talk of data security, we talk of zero trust. So essentially, if we keep on informing the people and moving forward, we are doing the correct things. Look at our governments. They are not moving as fast as we would like them, but they are also making an effort. They are creating the legislation. It might not be enforced, because you'll find that in most countries, when you want to enforce something like data that was expropriated from a device, it's still adjudicated under common law. It's still considered like a common theft. So our governments are creating laws, right, to try and address cybersecurity, which is a good thing. The movement towards enforcing, that's where we lack. And at the same time, also having equipped and empowered people. I digress, but I remember an article from Japan from 2018, where their cybersecurity minister had never touched a computer before. We have a joke in the cybersecurity community where we say, if you want the perfect or the most secure system, it must be air-gapped. So by having that Japanese minister who never touched security skills, we have learned that all of us are at risk. So you'll find that all our financial institutions, all our telecommunications companies, all the companies that we consider to be technologically advanced have gone on campaigns to assist the consumers of their products to understand that they are at risk, which is such a huge plus. And this is something that was never there before. And you'll find that even the telecommunications companies or these other internet companies, they are slowly but surely migrating into companies or organizations that offer professional services with regards to cybersecurity. So what this essentially does is we now have techcos that are spreading or evangelizing cybersecurity as a discipline. It means that we get to touch more and more people because all of these organizations have got databases that have got a lot of consumers. So this is all happening in Africa. I know sometimes we play second fiddle to the other countries from the so-called first world, but in this particular instance where we're talking of cybersecurity, I do believe Africa is on the right. It's on the right path. We might not be at the top of our game, but we are doing something right. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for keeping well within time. I think I noticed Thoko was online. Do you have any initial thoughts on this particular topic of that we're discussing, cybersecurity strategies to support Africa's digital economy?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to the floor. And I think that firstly, this is a really important topic for us to be looking at within the African context specifically. It's already been mentioned in terms of the investment that's going into the space. It's already been highlighted that we have South Africa and Kenya and Nigeria that are now burgeoning in terms of a startup economy and looking at innovation landscapes and how these are growing and how these are actually developing to become, you know, the centers of business across Africa. These areas specifically are bringing out much more localized solution and much more Black-owned economic empowerment companies, as well as local investment into sector. So just with anything that is cyber, that is innovative, it's gone digital. And the minute that it goes digital, there is an immediate need for looking at the risks that are involved with cyber threats, with cyber proximity, with just basically the penetration onto the online space. So absolutely, it's so critical that not only we're having this conversation, but that we're finding sort of localized solutions for cybersecurity, and actually creating defensive techniques, defensive tactics against these cyber threats. It's most important at this point that we also look at the how. If we are going to look at our methodology, we'll better be able to access the types of problems that exist, the threats that exist, industry happenings, market trends, and understanding this is going to be what leads to the innovative burgeon. And in Africa as a whole, there's a huge need for cyber protection. We are one of the greatest countries in terms of malware attacks. There's a global proliferation, of course, of malware and software embedded viruses that pose in front as other information pieces, whether it be adverts online, particularly within the Android space, and especially for Android mobile devices, infecting these devices, phishing for the user's information, and without the appropriate protection, our users themselves are not safe online. The information is not safe online. And it is unfair to put users in that position where we actually have an increasing reported number of malware and other content embedded viruses. Just as I've mentioned, data protection, private protection, protection of intellectual property. These are also areas that we need to really hone in when it comes to cybersecurity, and look at the threats that are erupting as a result of intellectual property theft, and POPIA Acts should be updated to reach the current state of information at the moment, which is rampant, that users, both consumers and producers, are not aware of how to protect personal information online, how to protect personal information, how to prevent data breaches, how to actually use information correctly to fuel the internet, that there's appropriate disposal of information post activity. And I mean, when we're talking about the mega breaches, we're talking about at a state and at an individual level. We recently had a case in South Africa where the credit bureaus was infiltrated, and millions of South Africans had their credit histories, their credit data, all basically dating back as far as the record shows. And that kind of information to be leaked and to just have been phished is extremely concerning, but also highlights the nature of cybercrime and cyber criminals, and how they're actually leveraging on the dark web, on the black web, to better be able to leverage on this opportunity. And that's where we have an opportunity as well. With every threat, there's an opportunity. So it's how do we leverage on the dark web? How do we leverage on these dark internet spaces, maybe to create more ethical ways of hacking? Looking at ethical hacking, looking at how do we actually invoice out these materials and put some sort of halt on the rampant cybercrime that's taking place, that's averaging across the ecosystem of Africa, to a decline in economic activity, to a decline in what we're trying to achieve in terms of growth of the internet and growth of the of data, of innovation, of creating traction for sustainable digital economy and sustainable growth in Africa. So yes, it's very, very important that we do note that even though we're in this digital economy, especially in South Africa, Our economy is looking much more towards electronic goods now, mobile phones, tablets, laptops, TVs, and we need to be safe and look at how are we integrating the devices with the software, and how we integrating that with the protection of individual, because we do have a human right, which is to be protected online. And, the entrepreneurs are also looking at how can we protect different peoples online? Because, of course, the digital space is also a gendered space. It's also algorithmically a racialized space. It's also algorithmically a space which is disempowering towards children. And we need to understand how are we making sure that in this digital economy in South Africa, we're actually using the opportunity of cybersecurity that is presented, that we allow the investments to come through, but that we're protecting the users, the consumers, and the producers within the digital economy, that our citizens actually have access to a safe environment when they're online, safe digital tools when they're online.
Okay, I think we are over time here.
Oh, sorry, this was sentence.
Because Walter was so kind, he donated some of your time to you. So thank you. But hold some of the thoughts, and we'll come back. And also, Walter, thank you for donating some of your time. Very quickly, Professor Sebo, what are your initial thoughts, please, given the topic, cybersecurity strategies to support Africa's digital economy?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
All right. Okay, it seems if I have a problem with my video, so if you allow me, Chair, I'll continue. Let me first thank, thanks. Let me start thanking Africa for the invite. Not only that, congratulations to you on reaching your 10th year anniversary. Moving along with the discussions, and I'm thankful to the previous two speakers because they had highlighted some of the most important things that are needed when you're dealing with cybersecurity. We need to know that when you're dealing with cybersecurity, then we are dealing with a collection of tools, policies, security concepts, training, best practices, assurances, technologies, etc. And we see that in Africa, there have been strides made, whether the turn of the century with different member states enacting legislation, either on Electronic Communications and Transactions Act or Data Protections Act, or now the Cyber Crimes Act. And Chair, I just want to highlight that South Africa had just promulgated its Cyber Crimes Act of 2021, Cyber Crimes Act 19 of 2021, so that you could also update the status of South Africa. Having said that, you spoke, Chair, about, you mentioned the 2063, the Agenda 2063 agenda, and I'd just like to highlight that even though there isn't any mention there on digital or cyber or anything, you might as well understand that this was just a blueprint and a master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. When I went through the 2063 plan with its aspirations, I could see terms that speaks to that, whether creating an ICT space that will be safer for all citizens and other measures. But what's interesting is that we see moving on other policies or instruments that speaks to that. We see that there's in 2020, there's been an implementation of the digital transformation policy, the 2020 to 2031. Which also speaks to the issues that we are addressing here. And there is a dedication really to cybersecurity. When I look at these policies and the model laws and the conventions, whether the Malabo or the SADC model laws on cyber crimes and stuff, they always refer back to where it started, the aspirations of 2023. So you can see that there is a threat that Africa is trying its best to get to that world stage that they are seeking to. And with that, someone said, we are talking also about the FOIR, I think it was Thoko mentioning the AIs and algorithms and stuff. And we know in South Africa that is what the discriminatory nature of not only, the inequalities in the country itself, but you see those also playing themselves out on the internet. Recently, the South African human rights had to do some conducted inquiries on the advertising industry of South Africa, whereby they had published, some of the industry had published advertisements online which were discriminatory. And we see that also applying. And we see, I think that for me, what comes to mind is the African Declaration of on Internet Rights and Freedoms, which was also implemented in 2018, which really gives rise to addressing rights of users online, their human rights, speaks to data openness, diversity, privacy, access, equality, etc. Whether we are making strides, I think it's a first step that we are having all these laws and policies. Obviously, they were speaking to each other. The 2063 is a 50-year plan. It had also its 10-year milestone plan, whereby they needed to do other things. We'll still see what they have done so far in that regard. But we should be complimenting the continent for that. And I think one last thing on my side is this. While we are talking about the 4IR and the AIs and stuff, we need to understand that, as one has, Benyera has noted, that is the 4IR, especially for Africa or South Africa or whichever country we find ourselves in the continent, is 4IR a curse or a cure? And we need to look at it from that. But he goes on to say that we need to also take into account, the history of the continent itself, whether it's colonization, it's apartheid in South Africa, when we are dealing with those issues. So with these policies and model laws directing us to the right direction, of course, there are challenges, whether it's language barriers, whether it's cultural barriers, whether it's the misalignment of the laws themselves or policies. That is something that also needs to be addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it, and you kept within time. Sorene, you have about 5 minutes just to address some of the issues around cybersecurity strategies to support Africa's digital economy. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, moderator, and thank you all the previous speaker. And Professor Sebo said most of the things I would like to say, but there are a few things that I would like to add. I think if we look at the trade, when I talk about Africa, I just want to talk about it from AU's initiative perspective. I don't want to talk about from country level. African Union has led a few initiatives, including the Agenda 2063. As Professor Sebo said, it is just a blueprint and a master plan for transforming Africa. Yes, they didn't clearly say cybersecurity is the cornerstone of the digital transformation they are striving to go. Sometimes that is the biggest challenge, because cybersecurity has been looked at as an afterthought or a cross-cutting thematic area instead of a cornerstone or a foundation pillar for all digital transformation we are aspiring to. Then if we look back, the Malabo Convention is one of the proactive things we did as a continent. Having said that, we adopted it back in 2014. We are still struggling in 2022. Yes, as you acknowledge, moderator, the Gambia ratified it a few days ago. Yes, it is a right step forward. But having said that, even not having 15 countries, it is for us to sit down and think why. Our approach to Malabo Convention, was it human-centric or people-centric? Were we inclusive? Are we also addressing the issue of, okay, everybody, like we need 50 people, 50 countries, then after the 50 countries, then what? Where is the implementation leading? So what can we learn? The Malabo Convention came before the Agenda 2063. Then we came back with African Union digital transformation strategies. So all these things are, when they come, we didn't have the framework for Malabo Convention. That was the credible framework for cybersecurity for the African region to flourish in. So it's something to think back. Whenever we push something, do we have an enabling environment or framework for it to flourishing in? So one thing it keep on rising up is, how do we make cybersecurity the top agenda or the top priority, or getting the political buy-in? Yes, African Union, through the convention, they are trying to put or get the political buy-in, but how do we make cybersecurity a top of agenda? And most importantly, as an African or as a continent, do we have a cybersecurity strategy? Do we have an African cybersecurity agenda which will guide the whole continent as it is? Yes, I acknowledge the importance of looking at us as a continent, but also we have to recognize the different level of development skills or priority that we have for cybersecurity. How do we accompany those differences between countries? Those things will help us to move forward because they have positive development, but how do we keep each other's going to the same direction? Issues like, for example, you raised the issue of the single digital market. Yes, they never verbalized cybersecurity, or cybersecurity is not the prominent topic, but you cannot have digital single market without having a resilient digital or a digital ecosystem. Not have trust and resilience is very important to have a digital single market. So how do we go back and make cybersecurity the top priority in all these talk or agreement, or maybe moving forward, because there are so many initiatives going on? How do we put cybersecurity on the top of the agenda is the most important thing. In cybersecurity, one thing I want to say, if I'm finishing time, tell me, cybersecurity is a multi-dimensional thing. It's not only a legal framework or policy framework. There are so many things that comes together, from culture and skills, knowledge and capacity, institutional capacity that we need, technical capacity we need. Each one of them, they need to be at a maturity level, but all of them need to work in synergy for them to create the cybersecurity that we need. And cooperation, not only at a continental level, we need cooperation at a national level between different sectors. We need cooperation at a regional level, and cooperation between south to south, north to south, and triangulation cooperation for us to move forward, because cybersecurity is just a shared responsibility. No one can solve the cybersecurity issue in isolation. Also, Africa as a continent alone cannot solve cybersecurity on their own. That's all for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sorene. Just to remind the audience, please type in your questions, and when the time comes, I will ask them. Okay, good. I see two questions, Chris Waje and Advocate Luba. When we finish with Yusuph, Yusuph, please, what are your thoughts on cybersecurity strategies to support Africa's digital economy? Hello, Yusuph, you're on mute still.
Okay, now I realized that.
Welcome.
Apologies. Apologies. Thank you very much, brother Abdul-Hakeem. Long time no see, by the way. So it's really good to see you. All right. I'm very pleased to hear other previous speaker that spoke at length on a number of things that probably some of them I wanted to highlight. I think one thing that I'm very happy now to see is that I think all of our most of our African countries, if not all of them, have realized that we need technology if we want to enhance or we want to move forward in terms of growing our economy, if you want to speed up our development as a continent. So that's one thing that I'm extremely happy to see most of African countries that have seen that as one of the very key important things. But one thing that they forget is that as we invest heavily on technology in order to enhance job creation, speeding up way we deliver services to our people, and many other things that we can do through technology, they forget that they come along with the risk. Cybersecurity, I mean cyber crimes, cyber challenges, cyber threats are all over. I remember the other time, last year, I was reading the Interpol report saying that the cyber crimes leads to the minimizing or reducing the DGP of African continent by 10%, which is actually equivalent to around 4.12 billion USD. This is a huge amount of money that we keep losing because of cybercrime in our African continent. So I think our leaders and the leaders of different governments need to come up with strong strategies, things that they can push the agenda of cybersecurity in our own countries. Speaking of Tanzania, currently we have pushed the agenda of e-commerce through the government entity called Posta. So people are investing, or people are doing a lot of e-commerce nowadays. You sell your equipment from whenever you are and they deliver it here and there. The transaction, they're trying to go, they're trying to implement cashless. In a government, we have systems that people can pay everywhere they are and all these kind of things. So the money keep on moving on the digital platforms. So these put our countries and in Africa at risk. So I think there is a need for us to enhance or to talk more on informing decision makers that as we enjoy the joy that come along with the technology, then we should not forget that it has a lot of challenges that we need to put a lot of efforts to make sure that at least we reduce at a certain level. Because I think if you look at it, for example, ourselves in the country, we have started putting a lot of initiative when it comes to combat cyber crime or cyber challenges in the country. Although we can't have the actual statistics showing where are we and how are we moving forward, but at least there are several initiatives. For example, Cybersecurity Awareness Month of October, we have done a tremendous job across many regions in the country. And also, we are pushing the agenda of capacity building, making sure that our people are equipped with the know-how of how we can build up the skills of our individuals and so on and so on. But I believe that you have said that when I joined the conference, that Malabo Convention, we still have one country to join so that we can be at least accepted and start, we can move forward from there. I believe that also will be a game changer in the field of cybersecurity in our continent. So for me, I would say to start with, I would encourage more of us that we are in the field of cybersecurity and this knowledge to tell people as often and as constant as we can that there is a need for us not only to invest on cybersecurity, not only to invest on technology and enjoy the joy that comes along with technology, but as well to put a lot of efforts to make sure that our cyberspace is indeed safe. Let me begin there because I don't want to use as much time. Then later on, I can add some more thoughts on the subject. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. Just a reminder, if you do have questions, please type them in because we're trying to keep the momentum going. If I may go back to Walter, I actually asked you a question. Maybe you still have some thoughts to share with us before I ask you some of the questions from the floor. Walter, do you have any other thing you'd like to add? Because I asked you the question instead of asking you just to air your thoughts generally.
Sorry, Hakeem, can you come again? I lost you there for a bit. The joys of technology.
I was actually at the beginning supposed to give you 5 minutes to just give your general views on the topic. And instead, I asked you a question which you very kindly answered. Do you have any general views you would like to share with us before we move forward?
Oh, yes, that's fine. So
okay.
I just remembered that in the past week, the Arab community or the Arab world, they actually had a cybersecurity symposium. It was something big. So you'd find that the countries in the north of Africa would have been invited. So that I would like Africa to emulate such. Whoever will be the driver, maybe the African Union or organizations like AFICTA, if we can come to propagate such conferences. The Western world, they've got their DEFCON, they've made everyone aware because of such gatherings. South Africa, I think, has been trying very hard. They've got B-sides in Cape Town, in Joburg, they've got EXO, but you'll find that these conferences are still just attracting very small numbers, considering that the cybersecurity professional community is still very small, based on the fact that people consider the discipline to be niche. So I find that if we can have more gatherings that are publicized, that are streamed like this, we can actually be evangelists for cybersecurity, and we can actually help propagate. I also do find that in Africa, we really don't have career guidance. So personally, I stumbled into cybersecurity. 2010, when Sony was hacked, I was just finishing my undergraduate degree, and then I thought, how did these guys get in? Maybe I should learn hacking, hence my path for certified ethical hacking. But during the process, I realized that there is a buzz about people trying to break things. Where's the security? Where's the policeman? That's where the future is, because right now everyone's trying to break into things. So if you come across as a defender, then you are actually going to be someone who's going to be very useful. And back in those days, it was still just network security. So you were basically just firewalls, your blue coats and stuff like that, yeah. So it's the discipline has been growing, and I'm very happy about that. And I actually like the strides that Africa has been making to try and catch up with the rest of the world.
Excellent. Thank you. If I may go back to Prof, one of our guests, Mr. Chris Uwaje. First of all, he has a proposition. He would wish to propose for an African-wide legislation for the establishment of free kindergarten education fund for Africa. Now, that is his proposition, which is for all of us to think about. And I'd like you to keep this in mind, but his specific question, number one, was, can Africa attain a smart digital future without a unified cybersecurity curriculum in our education ecosystem? Professor Sebo. Hello. Okay, looks like she's gone off. Thoko, are you still around, please?
Yeah.
Hello. Okay.
Hi. Yes.
Can I ask you a slightly different question? We'll come back to Prof when she comes back online. And this goes to Mr. Uwaje's second question. That is, can a proactive, sustainable cybersecurity and digital economy mission be attained without deploying cybersecurity awareness lessons in Africa's over 5 million kindergarten and preschool domains?
You know what? I think this is a very interesting question, and it's across the board that we actually need this Africa-wide education on cybersecurity specifically. You know, I think a lot of what's happening at the moment is not just at kindergarten level, but at a social level, at a societal level. We need states to come in and actually proliferate information which advocates for greater cyber hygiene, as well as online security, online safety, protection of personal information, and overall a social cybersecurity framework for mass population education. You know, and if we're going to be administering innovation to the public, we also need to be providing public administration of people once they are on these digital spaces. So yes, absolutely. I think that it will be to our demise if we're going to be looking at growing innovation, growing platforms, growing technology, but we're not providing our citizens with the appropriate education on this front. And I think that's also something that, you know, needs to come to the forefront. whether it's for farmers in rural areas, whether it's for hospital staff, now digitizing records and upkeep, whether it's, in any sphere, basically. And the next generation are the ones that we need to protect, because they didn't ask for this. And we have to make sure that we're creating a safe world for them.
Thank you. Sorene, Advocate Nsaluba has basically 3 or 4 questions, but let me just throw the first to you. If you could answer it in under 2 minutes, maybe 1.5 minutes. Sorene, how do we see the interface of the various stakeholders responsible for cybersecurity across the globe?
As I mentioned during my opening, cybersecurity is a multi-stakeholder interaction. In every role, every stakeholder, including the citizen, have a role to play. As one of, I think Walter or Yusuph said, human being the weakest link in the chain of cybersecurity. So if none of the stakeholders are playing their role, we won't have a culture of cybersecurity. For instance, the role of civil society, for example, usually ignored in cybersecurity community. Even me coming from a technical field, people feel that cybersecurity is a technical measure, but if you are not involving the civil society who are there to advocate, who are there to make sure that accountability is there, then it will be, I think, a failed process. So all multi-stakeholder partnership need to be sustainable and meaningful relationship that need to be built to have a proper cybersecurity ecosystem. I think I just want to highlight one thing. During the opening, the moderator mentioned that how the African free trade didn't even mention cybersecurity, because the assumption is they are trying to have an agreement on trade, but they are failing to understand the digital single market also need the foundation pillar of cybersecurity. So people from cybersecurity community, stakeholder from cybersecurity community should be on the table when those drafts of agreement need to be in place. Sometimes that is the biggest problem when we come to implementation, because we don't involve the necessary stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go over to Yusuph. Again, a follow-up question. If you could please keep it to 1.5 minutes, I'd be grateful. And the question is, why do we have an increase in cyber threats despite the increase in legislative provisions across states that deal with cyber crimes? Where is the link and how do we deal with it? Noting that the domestication of NFTs within blockchain, what are the interventions to educate the rural persons as society is cyber zoned and smart citied? So really, why do we have an increase in cyber threats despite more legislation? Yusuph.
Thank you very much, Abdul-Hakeem. Actually, what I've always say is that we have a bigger challenge. Having laws in place, these legal frameworks in places cannot resolve the challenges by itself. It cannot make us our cyberspace safe at all. But we need a lot of other things in place. For example, most of the time you find countries, they have these cybercrime acts in places, but then people refuse to agree with the Cybercrime Act. They say probably other country, they call it shut up laws, different names, they brand those particular laws, despite those laws coming in so that they can resolve challenges, they can make their life easier. We can prosecute people who are troubling us through cyberspace. So the problem here is that when the process of coming up with these laws, normally they don't really involve stakeholders, multi-stakeholders of different angles in most of African countries. This is a challenge, number one. But number two, when these laws are in place, which is something very good, then we don't expect these laws to be enforced if people are not aware. So then it comes to the story of cybersecurity awareness. So we find countries that don't invest a lot in cybersecurity awareness. You can ask yourself, we had Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October this year. How many countries at a government level participated fully on this particular celebration, making sure that individuals from all angles, from rural and urban area, all of them get the benefit of learning how they can protect themselves from these attacks, how they can detect, and so on and so on. So because of these challenges, and then lack of collaboration, lack of, we don't have agencies in Africa which are strong dealing with cybersecurity and so on, then we keep seeing a lot of cybercrime keep on happening. I keep seeing a lot of people keep on falling victims because of these challenges. So this is, I think, quickly, because they give me a shorter time, I think I could say that is why we still have these challenges. We need to know more, to do more, to change what we see currently. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. We are running low on time. So Walter, very quickly, would the ratification of the Malabo Convention assist in profiling cybersecurity continentally? Given the various states have extracted some elements into their ICT and data protection laws already, and apparently the latest African session on procurement in Africa highlighted the existence of legacy systems. What would the ratification of the convention assist in fast-tracking secure continental online payment and procurement systems to enable better sourcing as well as manage the costing paradigm? So Walter, can you do this in a minute, please?
Okay, cool, I'll try. So I am of the opinion that ratifying the Malabo Convention will actually allow for proliferation of a framework across the continent, right? So essentially what I'm trying to say is, if you have the framework going or governing across the continent and also allowing for prosecution that is standard across the continent, then it's actually going to make more and more countries aware and also allow people to start conforming. Because currently as it stands, if legislation only applies in your country and there's no extradition and the like, and your country does not observe cybersecurity crimes, you can get away with murder. But in this case, where we have a framework that is standard across and allows for the prosecution of the crimes, then it will allow for everyone to be judged on an even playing field. With regards to payments and the stuff, I would like to draw your attention to PCI. There are standards and protocols already in place across the world that MasterCard, Visa, and all financial institutions are held to. So these do apply already to ensure that we are protected without having to leverage back on government or national legislation. I will be willing to explain further if you reach out to me after the session.
Excellent, thank you very much. Is Professor Sebo back, please? I can't see her name, but maybe she's under a pseudonym. Professor? Professor? Okay. If I could just go back to Yusuph. Could you reflect on how you have managed to have various sessions in your vernacular, given the jargon and the terms that are within cyberspace?
Thank you very much, Abdul-Hakeem. Actually, it's something that we currently try harder, because you see, for example, in Tanzania, most people, if you train or you speak with them with a different language apart from Swahili, they may not be able to capture well the message you're trying to deliver. So we do all we can to see how we can be able to translate and utilize our own way of explaining things in terms of cybersecurity, making sure that, because the message is clear. We want them, for example, not to click unwanted links. We want them not to share their password. We want them not to do this and that. So because of that, we translate those terminologies and translate all those things with the help of what we call Bakita in our country, the organ that helps us translate English word into Swahili. Then we decided to utilize that, that language, because we believe most people will be able to grasp what we are saying. And because the target of us delivering this awareness program to rural areas and everywhere, schools, everywhere we go to, is to make sure that people understand our target, understand what we want them to do. So if we don't utilize the simplest way, because actually even I normally say most of the time, the key things for awareness to be effective in our countries, we must not only make it entertaining, but also make it easier for people to understand what we're trying to tell them. Because if you complicate things, they get bored. And after they get bored, they will not be able to understand what you're trying to say. And eventually, it will not be effective. So we normally find different ways to make sure that things are done properly. But also, Abdul-Hakeem, my brother, I know you're chairing this African Union group of experts. You have also a big role to make sure that our African Union, the government officials there in African Union, they understand and they apply these knowledge of cybersecurity and be able to change things in our African countries, because I think we have a long way to go. Despite most of African countries, including my own country, Tanzania, now we have a blueprint for digital economy. We want to make sure that digital economy is on top of agenda in most of politicians in the country. So because of all this, we need to, and your position at African Union, I think you should be able to remind these government officials that we, despite of all these good things that comes along with technology, the digital economy that everyone wants, then there is a risk of cyber attacks. There is a risk that comes along with cyber attacks. And we have seen reports from all over that African economy is at risk because of cyber attacks. So we need to do something about it. I think you have a big role to play in your in that group of experts there at African Union, my brother. So I look forward to see more changes next time from our leaders.
Okay. Very, very quickly, let me just answer that by saying Aluta Continua Victoria Asserta. Very quickly, Dr. Jimson has noted that the UN research, they now have some new cybersecurity indicators related to GDP, internet penetration, and cybersecurity maturity. You can find this data on the website www.cd4ir.africa. I'm sure Jimson will have posted this on the chat as well. Sorene, there was an observation by Mr. Segun Olugbile. First of all, I think he concurs. He likes you pose a question: where is the implementation of the convention leading us in Africa? And really his question is it cybercrime investigation and prosecution to suit the EU demands or cybersecurity investment that will empower Africa? So Sorene, if you could do this in less than a minute, please.
Okay. Oh, yes, I have read his question. All I can say is I think we have to always contextualize to our own continent. I think that's the most important thing. Yes, the Malabo Convention ratification is right way to direction, but it's very important to understand and develop our context and develop solution that works for us. Be part of the co-creation of solution, because one of the biggest challenge we have is beyond the prosecution of cybercrime is we don't even own the data that we have. We always refer the cyber threat that we found at European or the greater north, but we don't really have even information to make an informed or evidence-based policies. So all I can say is going forward as an Africans, we need to contextualize whatever we need to do, be part of the co-creation of the solution, be it the policy or the legal framework, anything that will work for the community that we are in, because we know our community more than anybody else instead of just inheriting policies.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. Sorry, I have to cut you off. We have about 2 minutes left. I just wanted to give Thoko 30 seconds, Thoko. Omala asks, how do we decipher the issue of trust among the team who is to secure the system? Because it has been observed that those who are in positions of trust have breached the trust. So that's Amalara's question. Thoko, are you still with us?
Yes. Hi, Abdul-Hakeem. Yes, I'm here. And I think the first issue when it comes to trust is that there needs to be collaboration, openness, and transparency. As long as these principles are going to be open, that processes are transparent, thought processes are open, and that there is inclusivity in the decision making, it's absolutely critical that those three pillars are looked at and adhered to, and that's the solution. That's how we will get to ensuring trust.
Thank you very, very much. Professor Sebo, are you back yet? Okay, she's not back. We have, actually we are out of time. So let me just thank profusely the panelists. But more importantly, you know, I need to thank the audience for being with us. Without you, frankly, you know, we wouldn't be here. And certainly I wish to thank the audience, and the organizers. You've all made it possible and we appreciate your efforts. I would summarize by saying that no one else can make Africa better unless Africans do. And to achieve this, we must focus first and foremost on people, build human resource capacity, educate and empower citizens, leverage all citizens, women and youth and disadvantaged. The second area we need to focus on are the processes. We need to participate in global cyber norms and other developments. We need to adhere to global standards. We need to implement smart regulation. And certainly the third part of this is the technology. We need to develop and implement requisite infrastructure. And we need to engage in significant research development and innovation using, with indigenous solutions. So on that note, Africa must build proficiency in monitoring and navigating global economic, commercial, technology, and privacy and connectivity relationships as they, relate to cyberspace. And I'll just end with the comment by Raymond Mamata. From the look of things, it is important that we make cybersecurity part of the compulsory courses and lessons in schools from primary to university level. Staying safe in cyberspace has become relevant and comparable to the air we breathe. In this regard, I think the AU should make a proposal to its member states for them to make cybersecurity a compulsory course content in schools. So on that note, I thank you all very, very much for your participation. I thank you all for your time and energy. I thank you all for your goodwill, your ideas, and your intellect. And I just saw a pop-up from Professor Sebo. Her apologies. She heard everything, but the tools were disabled on her side. She sent emails with inputs. So I'm sorry we didn't get to hear you speak a little more. But to the rest of my colleagues, thank you very much. Have a great day and have good sessions. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Abdul-Hakeem. I look forward to keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Abdul. Much appreciated.
Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think a takeaway is that up until Africa does, we have to do, then a change will happen. We've got a hand by a gentleman, Peter Wasike. He's got his hand. I don't know if you are able to take take his hand so as to maybe clarify one of the questions that he might be having. Peter, come through.
Forgive me, Chair. I'd rather we didn't take a hand because I ignored other hands and insisted everybody go to the question and answer. That way, I want to stay fair, if you don't mind.
That's great. I think then, Peter, just put in your question in the Q&A. That question will be answered. You're most probably going to get a more comprehensive answer from all the people who are here, rather than maybe just one oral response to the question. We highly appreciate all the panelists. Thank you very much, Abdul, for moderating this session. It was very insightful. I highly appreciate it. I think, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, we will go for a small break.